She clutched the permit in her trembling hands, her knuckles turning white. The paper felt like a lifeline in the maelstrom of rage that consumed her. Janice glared down the street, her eyes narrowing as she watched the crew begin to unload their equipment. "This is my street," she screamed, her voice shrill and desperate. "You can't do this. I won't let you." The foreman paused, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Ma'am, we have a permit to perform maintenance on the road. I'm afraid you can't stop us." Janice's heart raced as she stomped towards the crew, waving the crumpled permit in their faces. "This is a lie. I own this street, and I say you can't work here." The foreman held up a hand, his expression hardening. "Look, lady, I don't know what kind of nonsense you're pulling, but we got a job to do. Now, I suggest you step back before you get yourself into trouble." Janice's eyes darted around the street, searching for any sign of support. But her neighbors, who had once rallied behind her, now watched with a mix of pity and disdain. She felt alone, her power slipping through her fingers. "No," she shouted, her voice cracking with desperation. "This is my street. You can't just come in and take it over." The foreman sighed, gesturing to his crew. "Let's get started, guys. Ignore the crazy lady and focus on the work." Janice's chest heaved as she watched the crew begin to set up their equipment. She had to stop them, had to prove that this was her domain, her kingdom. With a sudden, determined stride, she marched towards the nearest worker, snatching the shovel from his hands. "Get off my street," she growled, swinging the shovel with all her might. The worker yelped in surprise, stumbling backwards as the shovel sliced through the air. Janice's heart pounded in her ears, her vision narrowing to the task at hand. She had to protect what was hers, no matter the cost. The foreman's eyes widened, and he quickly stepped forward, placing himself between Janice and the crew. "All right, that's enough," he shouted. "I'm calling the police if you don't calm down and let us do our job." Janice faltered, the shovel trembling in her hands. The police? She couldn't risk that, not when she had fought so hard to maintain her control over the street. But she couldn't back down, not now. This was her last stand, her final chance to assert her dominance. With a deep, shuddering breath, Janice raised the shovel once more, her eyes wild and determined. "This is my street," she growled, her voice low and menacing. "And I'll do whatever it takes to keep it that way." The foreman's face hardened, his jaw set with resolve. He raised a hand, signaling his crew to stand back as he stepped towards Janice, his eyes narrowed. "Look, lady, I don't know what kind of delusion you're living in, but this is a public street. You don't own it, and you can't just waltz in here and start assaulting my workers." Janice's grip tightened on the shovel, her knuckles turning white. "You're wrong," she spat, the words dripping with venom. "This is my street, and I'll be damned if I let you or anyone else take it from me." The foreman let out a humorless laugh. "Oh, really? And what exactly are you going to do, huh? Swing that shovel around like a lunatic? Go ahead, take a swing, see how that works out for you." Janice's eyes darted around the street, desperately searching for a way out of this confrontation. But the gathered crowd, once her loyal supporters, now watched with a mixture of pity and disgust. She was alone, her power slipping through her fingers. I'll call the police," she stammered, her voice shaking. "You can't do this without my permission." The foreman shook his head, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. "Oh, I think you'll find that we can. We have a valid permit, and you're the one threatening my crew with a weapon. If anyone's calling the cops, it's gonna be me." Janice felt the blood drain from her face as the reality of her situation set in. She was running out of options, her carefully constructed facade of control crumbling around her. Panic clawed at her chest, and she fought the urge to turn and flee. "No, you can't," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "This is my street. Mine." The foreman sighed, a hint of pity creeping into his expression. "Look, lady, I get that you're upset, but this isn't your personal fiefdom. It's a public road, and we have a job to do. Now, are you going to let us get to work, or do I need to call the police and have you removed? Janice's world seemed to narrow, the sounds around her fading into a distant hum. She couldn't give up, couldn't let them take what was rightfully hers. But the weight of the shovel in her hands felt like a lead anchor, dragging her down into a sea of defeat. With a shuddering breath, Janice let the shovel slip from her fingers, the metal clanging against the pavement. Her shoulders slumped, and she turned away, her steps heavy and despondent. "This isn't over," she muttered, her voice barely audible. "I won't let you take my street." Janice stormed back to her house, her mind racing with a whirlwind of emotions. Rage, humiliation, desperation. They all swirled together, threatening to consume her. She slammed the front door behind her, the sound echoing for the empty rooms. With trembling hands, she grabbed her phone, her fingers flying across the screen as she scrolled through her contacts. There had to be someone, anyone, who could help her stop this madness. Her gaze settled on the number of her HOA president, and she pressed the call button, her heart pounding in her ears. "Hello." The familiar voice on the other end of the line cut through the chaos in Janice's mind. "Margaret, it's Janice," she said, her words tumbling out in a rushed, frantic manner. "They're trying to take over my street. The city or the construction crew or someone. I don't know. But they have a permit, and they're trying to do work on the road, and I can't let them." There was a brief pause, and Janice could almost hear the frown in Margaret's voice. "Janice, what are you talking about? What's going on?" "The street, Margaret," Janice exclaimed, her grip tightening on the phone. "It's mine, and they're trying to take it away from me. You have to help me stop them." Another pause, this one longer and more weighted. "Janice, I'm afraid I can't just stop the city from performing maintenance on a public road. That's not how it works." Janice felt the air leave her lungs, her heart sinking. "What? But you have to, Margaret. This is my street, and I won't let them take it." "Janice, listen to me," Margaret said, her tone firm yet measured. "The street is not your personal property. It's a public thoroughfare, owned and maintained by the city. You don't have the authority to prevent them from doing necessary work." Janice shook her head, her grip on the phone tightening. No, that can't be right. I've taken care of this street for years, Margaret. I've swept the sidewalks, trimmed the trees, even repaired potholes. It's mine." "I understand how you feel, Janice," Margaret said, her voice laced with sympathy. "But the street doesn't belong to you, no matter how much time and effort you've put into it. It's a public space, and the city has the right to maintain it as they see fit." Janice felt the world slip away, leaving her adrift in a sea of despair. Her carefully constructed reality, the one where she reigned supreme over her domain, was crumbling before her eyes. She opened her mouth to protest, to plead, but the words died on her lips, replaced by a choked sob. I don't understand," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. "This is my street. It has to be." "I'm sorry, Janice," Margaret said, her tone laced with regret. "But you need to accept the reality of the situation. This isn't your street, and you can't stop the city from doing their job." Janice stared at the phone, the weight of Margaret's words crushing her. She had fought so hard, sacrificed so much, all to protect what she had believed was hers. But now, it was all for naught. The street, her domain, her kingdom, it was never truly hers. With a shaky breath, Janice hung up the phone, her hand trembling. The walls of her carefully constructed world were crumbling, and she had no idea how to stop the inevitable collapse. Janice paced her living room, her mind racing with a torrent of conflicting emotions. Rage, despair, and a deep sense of betrayal swirled within her, threatening to overwhelm her senses. "This can't be happening," she muttered under her breath, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "It's my street. Mine." She had invested so much time, effort, and pride into maintaining that stretch of pavement. She had swept the sidewalks, trimmed the trees, and even filled in potholes with her own hands. It was her domain, her kingdom, and no one had the right to take it away from her. A sudden realization struck her, and she froze, her eyes widening with a glimmer of hope. The HOA, she whispered, a determined glint in her gaze. They have to help me. They can't let the city just take over my street. Ignoring the lingering ache in her shoulders from wielding the shovel, Janice strode over to her desk and pulled out a stack of documents. She frantically flipped through the pages, searching for the HOA bylaws and covenants. Her fingers traced the fine print, her brow furrowing with concentration. There has to be something here, something that gives me the right to control this street, she muttered, her voice laced with desperation. As she scanned the documents, her heart sank. The bylaws were painfully clear. The HOA had no authority over public streets or the city's maintenance plans. Janice's grip on the papers tightened, the edges crinkling under the pressure. No, 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 she cried, throwing the documents to the floor. This can't be happening. I won't let them take my street. Janice paced the room, her mind racing to find a solution. She had to stop the construction crew, to prove once and for all that this was her domain. But the foreman's words echoed in her mind, a stark reminder of the reality she now faced. I have a permit, he had said, his voice laced with authority. You can't stop us. Janice let out a frustrated growl, her hands pulling at her hair. The permit. That was the key. If she could somehow get that permit revoked, then the city would have no choice but to leave her street alone. With a renewed sense of determination, Janice rushed to her computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She searched for the city's permit office, her eyes scanning the website for any information on how to challenge a permit. There has to be a way, she muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration. I won't let them take my street without a fight. As she delved deeper into the website, a glimmer of hope began to take shape. There was a process for appealing a permit, a way for her to make her case and potentially stop the construction crew from invading her domain. Janice leaned back in her chair, a wry smile spreading across her face. All right, you bastards, she whispered, her eyes narrowing with determination. Let's see how you like it when I play by the rules. Janice strode into the municipal building, her head held high and her gaze steely. She approached the counter, her fingers drumming impatiently on the smooth surface. I need to file an appeal against a permit, she announced, her voice firm and authoritative. The clerk behind the counter looked up, his expression neutral. All right, ma'am. What permit are you trying to appeal? Janice slid a crumpled copy of the permit across the counter. This one. They're trying to do work on my street, and I won't stand for it. The clerk scanned the document, his brow furrowing slightly. I see. Well, you'll need to fill out this form and provide any supporting documentation you have. He pushed a stack of papers towards Janice. Janice snatched up the forms, her eyes scanning the pages with a mixture of determination and trepidation. How long will this take? She asked, her tone clipped. The process can take a few weeks, depending on the complexity of the case, the clerk replied, his voice calm and measured. Janice felt her heart sink. A few weeks? She couldn't wait that long. The construction crew was already on her street, and she needed to stop them now. That's not good enough, she snapped, her eyes narrowing. I need this permit revoked immediately. This is my street, and I won't let them destroy it. The clerk raised his hands in a placating gesture. I understand your concern, ma'am, but the appeal process has to follow the proper channels. There's nothing I can do to expedite it. Janice's jaw clenched, her frustration boiling over. Then what's the point of this appeal? She demanded. If it's going to take weeks, the damage will already be done. The clerk sighed, his expression growing weary. I'm sorry, but that's just how the system works. If you want to challenge the permit, you'll need to follow the proper procedures. Janice felt the walls closing in around her, the weight of her predicament bearing down on her. She had come here, hoping to find a quick solution, a way to reclaim her street before the construction crew could taint it. But now, faced with the bureaucratic red tape, her hopes were quickly fading. "This is unacceptable," she growled, her fingers crumpling the appeal forms. "I won't let them take over my street. There has to be something else I can do." The clerk shook his head, his lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm afraid the only option is to go through the formal appeal process, ma'am. Unless you can provide new, compelling evidence that the permit was issued in error, there's nothing else I can do." Janice felt the desperation rising within her, threatening to overwhelm her. She had to find a way to stop the construction, to protect her domain. Turning on her heel, she stormed out of the building, her mind racing with a desperate, frantic plan. "I'll show them," she muttered under her breath, her eyes gleaming with determination. "This street is mine, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep it that way." Janice paced the sidewalk, her gaze fixed on the construction crew as they continued their work. The sound of jackhammers and the rumble of machinery filled the air, each impact a knife to her heart. "This is my street," she muttered, the words a mantra that she clung to with every fiber of her being. "They can't do this. I won't let them." She had exhausted her options at the municipal building, the bureaucratic red tape offering no solace. Now, as she watched the crew tear into the asphalt, a flicker of desperation ignited within her. Janice's eyes scanned the area, searching for anything, any weapon she could use to reclaim her domain. Her gaze settled on a discarded metal pipe, and without a moment's hesitation, she snatched it up, the weight of it familiar and comforting in her hands. "All right, you bastards," she growled, her knuckles whitening as she tightened her grip. "Time to learn who really runs this street." With a determined stride, Janice marched towards the crew, the pipe held high above her head. The foreman, sensing the impending danger, quickly stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to put that down and step away," he said, his voice firm, but tinged with a hint of caution. Janice's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a sneer. "Not a chance," she spat. "This is my street, and I won't let you destroy it." The foreman's brow furrowed, his expression darkening. "I already told you, this is a public street, and we have a valid permit to work on it. You need to back off before someone gets hurt." Janice's grip on the pipe tightened, her knuckles turning white. "I don't care about your stupid permit," she snarled. "This is my domain, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect it." Without warning, she swung the pipe, the metal connecting with the side of a nearby construction vehicle with a deafening clang. The crew members scattered, their shouts of alarm echoing down the street. The foreman's eyes widened, his expression a mixture of shock and fury. "That's it, lady," he yelled, his hand reaching for his phone. "I'm calling the cops, and you're going to jail for this." Janice's heart raced, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She knew the consequences of her actions, the potential for arrest and legal repercussions. But in that moment, none of it mattered. This was her street, her kingdom, and she would fight to the bitter end to keep it. "Go ahead and call them," she shouted, her voice laced with a manic edge. "I'll be waiting right here, ready to defend what's mine." The foreman's jaw clenched, his expression hardening. "You've got some serious issues, lady, but I'm not going to let you destroy my crew's equipment. We're out to here." With a curt nod, he gestured to his crew, and they quickly began to pack up their tools and machinery. Janice watched, her chest heaving, as they slowly retreated from her domain. "That's right," she murmured, a triumphant grin spreading across her face. "This street is mine, and I won't let anyone take it from me." Janice stood in the middle of the silent street, the metal pipe still clutched tightly in her hands. The construction crew was gone, their equipment neatly packed away, and an eerie calm had settled over the neighborhood. A small part of her felt a twinge of regret, a whisper of doubt that maybe, just maybe, she had taken things too far. But that voice was quickly drowned out by the surge of pride and vindication coursing through her veins. I did it, she murmured, her eyes scanning the pristine asphalt with a sense of possessive satisfaction. This street is mine, and no one can take it from me. As the adrenaline began to subside, Janice's gaze drifted towards her neighbors, who watched from their windows and porches with a mixture of bewilderment and unease. She felt a pang of resentment, a reminder that they had once been her loyal subjects, only to turn against her in her hour of need. "They'll see," she muttered, her grip on the pipe tightening. "They'll all see that this is my domain, and they'll respect it." Straightening her shoulders, Janice marched back to her house, her steps firm and determined. She had won this battle, but she knew the war was far from over. The city would surely retaliate, and she needed to prepare for the onslaught. Stepping into her home, Janice set the pipe down on the kitchen counter, her gaze sweeping over the familiar surroundings. This was her sanctuary, her bastion against the forces that sought to strip her of her control. With a renewed sense of purpose, she began to gather her documents, her fingers meticulously organizing the pages that detailed her ownership and maintenance of the street. If the city tried to challenge her, she would be ready, armed with the evidence to prove that this was her domain, her kingdom. As she worked, a sly smile crept across Janice's face. "They think they can just waltz in and take what's mine," she murmured, a hint of dark amusement in her tone. "Let them try. I'll show them what happens when you cross the queen of this street." The sound of sirens in the distance drew her attention, and Janice's heart raced with a mix of apprehension and exhilaration. The police had been called, and she knew they would be coming for her. But she was ready, her defenses firmly in place. "Bring it on," she whispered, her eyes narrowing with determination. "I'm not going down without a fight." Janice took a deep breath, her fingers smoothing out the crumpled pages of her documents. This was her moment, her chance to prove once and for all that this street belonged to her, and her alone. No matter the cost, she would protect what was rightfully hers. The flashing lights of the police cars cast an eerie glow over the quiet street as Janice stood her ground, her chin held high. She had known this confrontation was inevitable, and she had prepared herself for the moment of reckoning. As the officers approached, their expressions grim and resolute, Janice felt a surge of defiance coursing through her veins. This was her domain, her kingdom, and she would not surrender it without a fight. "Ma'am, we've received a report of vandalism and assault," one of the officers said, his voice firm and authoritative. "We're going to need you to come with us." Janice held up a hand, her eyes narrowing. "Wait, officer, there's been a misunderstanding. This is my street, and I was simply defending what's rightfully mine." The officer's brow furrowed, his gaze sweeping over the damage to the construction equipment. "Ma'am, that's not how it works. You can't just take the law into your own hands and destroy private property." Janice's grip tightened on the stack of documents in her hands, her knuckles turning white. "But you don't understand," she insisted, her voice laced with desperation. "This street is mine. I've maintained it for years, and I won't let anyone take it from me." The officer shook his head, his expression hardening. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that's not how it works. This is a public street, and the city has the right to perform maintenance on it. Your personal feelings don't give you the authority to vandalize and assault the crew." Janice felt the weight of the officer's words like a physical blow, her world crumbling around her. She had fought so hard, sacrificed so much, all to protect what she had believed to be her domain. But now, standing here, face to face with the harsh reality, she realized the bitter truth. This street had never truly been hers. "No, you're wrong," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of desperation and defeat. "This is my street. It has to be." The officer sighed, his expression softening slightly. "I understand how you feel, ma'am, but the law is clear. This is a public thoroughfare, and you can't just claim it as your own. Now, I'm going to have to ask you to come with us to the station." Janice stared at the officer, her mind racing with a desperate, last-ditch effort to hold onto her crumbling reality. But the weight of the documents in her hands, felt like a lead anchor, dragging her down into the cold, hard truth. With a shuddering breath, Janice let the papers slip from her grasp, scattering across the pavement. She raised her hands in surrender, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "All right," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "I'll go with you." As the officers gently guided her towards the waiting police car, Janice felt the last vestiges of her control slipping away. This street, her domain, her kingdom, it had never truly belonged to her. It was a public space, a shared resource, and she had no right to claim it as her own. The realization struck her like a lightning bolt, shattering the carefully constructed world she had built around herself. With each step towards the car, Janice felt the weight of her delusions crumbling, leaving her adrift in a sea of harsh, unforgiving reality. As the car pulled away, Janice stared out the window, watching the street she had once believed to be hers fade into the distance. The truth was clear now, a bitter pill she had been forced to swallow. This street had never been hers, and it never would be. She had fought a losing battle, and now she was paying the price.